Welcome to AOF Market Intelligence, powered by AI, where we take a deep dive into some of the most interesting trends we're seeing. This time, we're looking at why Edmonton's becoming a real hotspot, I guess you could say, for real estate investment in Canada.
Yeah, there's a lot of buzz around Edmonton right now. Is it really the next big thing? We're going to try to answer that for you today.
We've got all the latest data on the Edmonton real estate market itself. We're also looking at Alberta's economy, how that plays into it, and even the federal election coming up.
It's a lot to cover, but we're going to make sure that whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, you get something out of this.
We don't want you to have to wade through a ton of spreadsheets and articles.
No.
We've done that for you,
Yeah.
and we're going to just give you the highlights.
Exactly, the stuff that really matters. So why don't we kick things off with just a look at the raw numbers from the Edmonton real estate market.
Sounds good. Let's start with the Greater Edmonton area, the GEA. In March 2025, the average residential sale price hit $460,685. And year to date, it's $440,437.
So that's a pretty solid jump from last year. Remember, in March 2024, the average was 430,646, and year to date, it was 410,875.
It's definitely a significant increase. It makes you wonder if this is like just a normal market fluctuation or if there's something more driving it.
Yeah, and I think we might have an answer to that when we look at some of the other factors influencing the market.
Okay, let's dig into the specifics a little more. Looking at different property types, we see some interesting trends. For detached homes, the average price in the GEA in March 2025 was $573,656. But interestingly, within Edmonton City itself, it was a bit lower at $553,793. For semi-detached homes, the average was $430,646 in the GEA and $427,719 within the city.
So a bit of a premium for being outside the city limits in that case.
Looks like it. For row or townhouses, it was $314,791 for the GEA and $312,084 in Edmonton City.
And what about condos?
Condos averaged $217,701 in the GEA and at $215,055 in the city. So you can see there's a clear hierarchy there. Detached homes at the top, then semi-detached, then row townhouses, and condos at the more affordable end.
That gives investors a good range of options depending on their budget and their investment strategy.
Exactly. Now, beyond just the prices, the volume of sales also tells us a lot. In March 2025, the total residential sales volume for the GEA was a whopping $1,225,745,404.
Wow, that's serious activity.
It is. You don't see numbers like that in a slow market.
No, definitely not. That kind of volume, especially with the rising prices we've seen, suggests strong buyer confidence. People are really putting their money where their mouth is.
Absolutely. And it's worth noting that inflation might be playing a role here, too. The year-over-year inflation rate in the Edmonton CMA, that's the Census Metropolitan Area, increased a little bit to 2.9% in February 2025, up from 2.8% in January.
Still a lot lower than the 4.2% we saw in February 2024, though, right?
That's right. So while inflation's not totally out of control, it's something to keep an eye on, especially if you're thinking about how sustainable this real estate price growth is.
Yeah, because if inflation gets too high, it could start to scare off buyers.
Now, let's zoom out a little bit and look at the broader context. Alberta's population has been growing pretty significantly, and a lot of that growth is coming from interprovincial migration. Last year alone, over 36,000 people moved to Alberta from other provinces.
Yeah, and that's the third year in a row where Alberta has seen net interprovincial migration. So people are clearly seeing something they like in Alberta.
It's a 15% decrease from the previous year, but it's still a lot of people moving to the province. And it seems like a lot of that has to do with Alberta's economy, especially its job growth, which has been faster than in other parts of Canada.
Makes sense. When jobs are plentiful and the cost of living is relatively affordable, people are going to move there.
Especially when you compare it to places like Ontario and BC, which have much higher costs of living.
And those are the two provinces where most of these new Albertans are coming from. 44% from Ontario and 28% from BC.
And it's not just Canadians moving to Alberta. International migration was actually the biggest driver of population growth last year at 69%.
Wow, so it's really a mix of people from all over.
Exactly. And this kind of diversified population growth is great for Alberta's economy because it creates a broader base of demand for everything, including housing.
More people means more jobs, more spending, and more demand for housing, both for buying and for renting.
Which, of course, can lead to higher real estate prices.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about one of the big reasons Alberta's economy is doing so well, the energy sector.
Yeah, oil and gas, right. It's a huge part of Alberta's economy.
It is. In February 2025, Alberta's oil production hit a record high, averaging just over 4 million barrels per day.
4 million barrels, that's a lot of oil.
It is. That's 2% higher than last year, and it's actually a record for February.
So what's driving this surge in production?
A couple of things. Increased pipeline capacity means Alberta has more ways to get its oil to market, including to those lucrative Asian markets through the BC coast. And the current status of the U.S. tariff on Canadian energy products under the Canada-U.S.-Mexico Agreement, or CUSMA, has created a more stable and competitive environment for Alberta's energy sector.
So even with the ups and downs of global oil prices, it sounds like Alberta's oil industry is in a good position.
Right. And the expectation is that oil production will continue to be strong this year. Now, how do you think this is going to affect the real estate market in Edmonton?
If the energy sector keeps booming, it's likely to create even more jobs and attract even more people to Alberta, especially to major centers like Edmonton. And that increased demand for housing could push prices even higher. So for real estate investors, this could be a really good thing.
Especially if you're looking for long-term growth potential.
Exactly. Now, of course, there's always a level of uncertainty. And one big unknown right now is the upcoming federal election on April 28th, 2025.
Yeah, they could definitely shake things up a bit.
It could. Our sources tell us that a lot of people in Alberta's oil and gas industry are looking at this election through a lens of national unity. They feel like a conservative federal government aligned with the current provincial government would be better for Alberta's energy sector and its economy overall.
And they believe it would give Alberta a stronger negotiating position, especially with the U.S., when it comes to things like energy exports and pipelines.
Which makes sense, given how important the energy sector is to Alberta.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's also a sense among some Albertans, particularly those in the energy sector, that they've been sidelined in the national conversation about climate change and energy policy.
Yeah.
And this is definitely influencing how they're approaching this election.
Yeah, I can see that. When a key part of a region's economy feels like its concerns aren't being heard, it can breed a sense of frustration and even alienation.
And that can have real-world consequences, not just for the energy sector itself, but for the entire economy, including the real estate market.
Right, because if people feel like the federal government isn't supporting their industry, they might be less likely to invest or create jobs, and that uncertainty can ripple through the whole economy.
Now, when we look at the policies of the two main parties, the Conservatives are in favor of an east-west pipeline and a national energy corridor, while the Liberals are open to new pipelines, but with the possibility of a veto from Quebec. So there are some clear differences there.
Yeah, and those differences could have a big impact on Alberta's energy sector and, by extension, on Edmonton's real estate market.
For example, a national energy corridor could potentially streamline the approval process for new pipelines, which would be good news for Alberta's oil producers.
And that could lead to even more investment, more jobs, and more growth in the province, which would ultimately benefit the real estate market.
Right. It's also interesting that, according to our sources, this election seems to be focusing more on issues like affordability and tariffs, with climate change taking a bit of a backseat.
That's probably a reflection of the economic anxieties that a lot of voters are feeling right now. Inflation, the cost of living, these are all very real and immediate concerns.
And those concerns are definitely going to influence how people vote.
Absolutely. And the outcome of this election could have a big impact on Alberta's economic future and its relationship with the rest of Canada, which in turn could affect the province's real estate market.
But just to be clear, we're not trying to endorse any particular political party or viewpoint here. We're just trying to provide context and highlight some of the potential factors that could affect Edmonton's real estate market.
Exactly. We're just laying out the information so that investors can make their own informed decisions.
So to sum it all up, what would you say are the key takeaways for someone who's thinking about investing in real estate in Edmonton?
First of all, the numbers are looking good. We're seeing strong price growth and a healthy level of sales activity, which suggests a lot of buyer confidence. The rental market is also solid, and underlying all of this is Alberta's strong population growth, driven by both interprovincial and international migration.
Right. People are moving to Alberta because of its affordability its job opportunities, and its overall quality of life.
Exactly. And a lot of that economic strength comes from the energy sector, which is doing very well thanks to increased pipeline capacity and access to new markets.
And the federal election is a wild card that could either reinforce these positive trends or introduce some uncertainty.
Right. So investors need to be aware of the potential risks and opportunities.
All right, that's a lot to think about. But here's a final question for you to ponder. Given all of this, what long-term opportunities or challenges do you foresee for Edmonton's real estate market?
That's a great question. It'll be interesting to see how things play out.
It will. And on that note, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the Edmonton real estate market.
It's been a pleasure.
This has been AOF Market Intelligence, powered by AI.